Good afternoon, it's the DJ man Ismail Abrams, and we are about to record episode number 2 on the origins of Sunday Soul Sessions. Thank you so much for watching episode 1. Thank you so much for all your input, and definitely we're going to get through all the comments and questions as well. In episode 2, alongside Kenny Maestri and Paul Mtirara, today we're going to talk about the music that was associated with Sunday Soul Sessions and those memorable songs that still stood the test of time when it comes to Sunday Soul Sessions on and off the air. But right now, I'd love to introduce Kick-Ass Kenny.
What it is, Ish, what it is, man.
Thank you so much for making time, and thank you so much for coming through and giving us your input, and looking forward to it, man. Especially from the years of 1997 all the way through till about 2000, at the height of Mafuta Jams. You were running around the country, being one of the most booked DJs back then. 3 gigs, you're saying 3 gigs, 1 city?
One weekend.
1 weekend, 3 cities you were touring. I would love to know, when it comes to Sunday Soul Sessions, whilst you were doing Mafuta Jams and doing the gigs around the country, did Sunday Soul Sessions cross your path? Who were the guys? What was your memory for Sunday Soul Sessions?
I hope I can remember all that. But firstly, let me just say that before I became a radio DJ, not presenter, by the way, there's a difference. I was a radio listener. But in terms of being a DJ versus a presenter, DJs relate to the music and the emotions behind it, and they connect with the listener and with the music, and you know, there's a link between the two. Whereas a music radio presenter just presents the music. You probably hear them on the radio cutting songs off before that beautiful ending to a song.
Oh, yes.
Stuff like that. So, you know, there's the creative side of music radio that sadly is lacking these days in big measures. But that takes me back to when I was a radio listener and I was working at Capital Radio in Durban. And I used to listen to Gran Shakwana. Shibabatu. He used to do weekends on Metro FM, and he laid the groundwork for what we know today as the love movement. So I used to listen to him washing my car at the weekend, and there's Grant, GTI, Durban fella, what to do? But yeah, and just listening to, like, for example, the Battle of the Stars, and you will set the table clock first. So you will play a curtain raiser artist before you went into, say, Whitney Houston versus Mariah Carey. But there was a way to invite and entice a listener. There was a use of words and descriptives that generated theater of the mind, the mental pictures that we get when listening to a radio DJ. And that was the foundations in which I got into Metro as a listener, and then later joining them in 1997. So I joined at a time when big names like Bob Mabena and Lawrence Dube had left the station and had gone on to independent commercial regional stations. So there was a vacuum. It was just Glenn Lewis who was doing gigs, and you know, had big shoes to fill. And thankfully I had the opportunity to do that. So at the time, it was more the weekday jocks that were playing Kwaito, in my case, house, hip hop and R&B, that were getting the gigs. So the love movement was more of a radio thing rather than in the venues, etc. And then, of course, Romeo Khumalo took over from Grant, and he started the romantic repertoire, which the late Eddie Zondi ran with. And it was only after I'd left Metro and joined 947 in Joburg that the love movement with guys like Paul, Eddie, and of course my brother Wilson Nkosi, a legend and an institution in radio itself, they then galvanized and brought out this love movement in connection with venues in townships. And I think Mamelodi, Pretoria, that's the essence of where the love movement started. And now, I mean, it's in almost every city around the country. So it had humble beginnings on radio initially. But then when guys with vision and people who saw that there was a potential to actually do events and do gigs took it to the people, that's when slow jams became a thing. So when I rejoined Metro FM in 2009 on the breakfast show, the Morning Jam, that's where I met Paul and Ismail again, because we know each other from Durban, and we reconnected. And I was like quite honestly amazed with the following that these guys had, even though, you know, they were doing these Sunday shows, some of them just one show a week, like in the case of Wilson. But the following on the radio station and at the gigs, it was just simply amazing. And of course, I took some notes. So eventually when I started doing the soul sessions myself at 702, and that's when Paul joined us as well, we took it to the next level. But I've got to say, Paul was the man who held my hand and took me through this whole journey, because I wasn't known as a soul and R&B DJ. I was known as the kick-ass Kenny, kicking it with the Mafuta jams, house jams, hip-hop and R&B. So for me to now evolve into a soul and R&B DJ, it was a learning curve, I have to be honest. I mean, I knew soul and R&B to an extent, but not to the extent that these cats knew, because they were in it. They were doing it for a living.
I'm glad you said what you said, because during the past 2 weeks since recording episode 1, I had a conversation. I had good few conversations with a good few guys from Metro and different radio stations from back in the day. And everything you said, they said on par. And
okay, so you know, we're not making stories.
No. And then just to reaffirm and make it known what Paul said in episode 1, when he said that the R&B soul Sunday Soul Sessions was commercialized and started by him and Eddie, the late Eddie Zondi. And there is no one I spoke to that could go against what he said. So as we put it now on screen, and we stamp it, that South Africa, Paul Mtirara and the late Eddie Zondi started and commercialized Sunday Soul Sessions to what you know of it. So ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in the living legend of Sunday Soul Sessions, Paul.
Thank you for the validation. It's a brand that just grew organically. I don't think Eddie and I knew what we were walking into. A couple of years later, it's still as strong as what it is. It's nice to know that Mr. Macy also joined the movement, and I figure the movement is just going to grow. I see a lot of new cats doing it. And just for the love of music. And
but the challenge with the new cats is, if you haven't lived the music, you know, there's that disconnect. Or if you haven't, you know, surrounded yourself with us grayer people who've lived the music, there's just such a disconnect, because you hear it on radio, you listen to it in gigs. We can have the same playlist, but compared to a new guy versus me, because I live the music, the way I blend my music, the way it flows in my set is totally different. And once again, it goes back to that emotional connection to the music and with the listener. So if you understand the movement and the music, you know, your set sounds so much better.
Yes, I figure that's what you learn over time.
Yes.
I think it's something that you generally get to understand, that what you play on set is also visible in terms of what your audience is. I've been to many different places where sometimes a song has a particular reach or reaction very differently from another place. And I've also realized that now areas have got different type of soul that they want to listen to. Some people like an older type of soul, some people like a newer type of soul. But the nice thing I like about it is that the newer market is starting to get into it slowly but surely. And I'm hoping that the newer market understands that you have to have that core, that base of soul sessions. Mine is the 90s. I think the 90s is. Some people prefer to go back to the 80s and the 70s. But you know, that's the preference. That's the preference of your market, which is quite nice. So it's nice to see that there's different variations of a brand that kind of started as small, but now it's just blossomed into something else.
Look, I mean, the same thing happened with Kwaito back in the day. We're seeing the same thing happening with Amapiano, and how international songs, I mean, I do old school mixes on my show, using remixes that are Amapiano versions of, say, a Whitney Houston track or Luther Vandross, you know. So it's interesting to allow a product to evolve, because you'll see different elements coming through. So, for example, I enjoy listening to YFM on a Sunday, their Sunday Feels show.
Yes.
It's just got a different element. It's got that Erykah Badu jazzy hip hop feel, which not everybody's doing, but you know, it appeals to a younger generation. But you know, it's good to incorporate them into the movement, because this is a huge thing on a Sunday. And what's happened because of what you guys did and the foundations that you've laid together with Wilson is create a movement that we've built on. And Sunday radio has actually become primetime radio. It's very competitive. You've got the regionals, you've got the community stations, and of course you've got the big dogs like Metro FM doing their thing. 702 does its thing on the side. But all in all, it's just an overall Sunday feeling that you get in Gauteng and around the country.
You know, I wanted to ask you this question, especially for you though. I'm a piano, right?
Yeah.
I just believe that I'm a piano started a long time for us. Remember back in the day, LM Jam?
Yes.
That's
we were there.
That's the origin.
The Mafuta Jams.
So the LM Jam era, that was kind of like the prelude to what it is, because it was an instrumental with that heavy bass in the background or that heavy piano.
Yeah, and then from there, you know, the Durban house sound came along, and then once that galvanized support in the country, then to sprout out into what we call Amapiano today, is just amazing. And you know, when I started playing Kwaito on Metro FM, it wasn't fashionable because at the stage, hip hop and R&B dominated, and you know, house on the weekend party shows.
The recording of the podcast, The Origin of Sunday Soul Session, was recorded at DJ Dino Bravo Production Studios.
Well, it's interesting because at the time I played Kwaito a lot as opposed to hip hop and R&B, which was popular on the station. So I broke a few glass ceilings. But it also created a door for Kwaito artists to come in and be aired on a national platform like Metro FM. And then from there, you know, house, mid-tempo, Amapiano, it started back in the day. So it's not like it just started now on its own. Nothing is an island. You know, there's always a progression. There's always a diversification, and you know, more and more genres come in.
I like the fact that you actually mentioned that, because just like with every music, there's always a tentacle or tentacles that, you know, branch into different forms of the original concept. And I don't even think there's an original concept. I think it all started at music. We're just kind of like different forms of music. Same thing with the Sunday Soul Sessions. I get to see different variations of it. People doing different things. And I think Ismail and Amon are going to actually talk about the different variations, especially with Pretoria, because Pretoria was like kind of the birthplace of the Sunday Soul Sessions. But now there's Mpumalanga, there's Cape Town, there's Durban, there's all these different places, and all new different DJs bringing different forms of what they perceive and understand what the Sunday Soul Sessions.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that, because even on my radio show, I'm now starting to play more crossover songs.
Nice.
Pop, soulish, new wave romantic stuff from the 80s, like Spandau Ballet, True, and stuff like that. And it's coming from the listeners requesting those artists. So I think we have to be open to evolving and growing and, you know, going with what people are saying they want to listen to, as opposed to prescribing a certain route or journey.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Mystery.
I agree. I agree with you guys 100%, but there's always a but, right? But I say that there still needs to be, to maintain that groundwork of Sunday Soul Sessions. The foundation still needs to be there. And I'm glad you guys touched on the whole new generation coming in, the new DJs. There's a lot of gimmicks at the moment. You know, DJs miming, DJs singing.
DJs looking a bit too pretty.
Yeah.
Because normally we're not that pretty.
Yeah, and nice to see there's a lot of female soul DJs jumping on the circuit as well. And then also, you know, we're getting, and then you turn away to the crowd, you say you get a lot of requests from your listeners. Same at venues. There's a new wave of audience and crowd coming to Sunday Soul Sessions, where for the life of me is beyond me my understanding on, you came to enjoy the music. The DJ must play the music, so you sing and dance. But it's now the other way around, where people are standing with their phones and watching the DJ dance and sing and play the music, which hence I say we still need to maintain the foundation of Sunday Soul Sessions, and especially what you touched on earlier. You guys touched on earlier where you talk about the connection of the music. So now there equals the total disconnect of the new guys with the new crowd, or the disconnect of the music. Because when you ask the new crowd that's standing with their phones and watching the DJ mime and sing and dance, ask them about the music. What song were you watching? Or they have no idea.
Yeah.
They can't recall what the DJ played or the songs that when they drive home or get home, they want to listen to a particular song that they heard at the venue. No.
Can I just come in there? I mean, I've had that pressure as well. Being an old school DJ, I've done this for 36 years. And it's only in recent years that the phone generation comes to your gigs. And I've had it at my old school gigs and even on the Soul Sunday gigs. It's just, there's a pressure one feels to perform. So I can understand why some DJs are doing that, because you've got this crowd of people with phones and lights in front of you, and you're standing there and you're queuing songs, and you feel this pressure to perform. But the point is this: I've never put myself above the music or the people. My role is to entertain them using the music that I know, as opposed to me being at the forefront and I'm here to put on a show. I am the star. No, I'm a facilitator of an experience.
Hence, we got to maintain the foundation, and then we're going to move on to Paul now.
However,
we're going to talk about...
I see Mr. Amon is here. I'd like for him to come through.
Yeah, he's the guy who performs.
Yes.
He can tell us.
We're going to bring in Amon, and we're going to talk about the different genres that have now come into Soul Sessions, especially now, most recently, the gospel. And Amon has taught me a good few gospel songs. So, ladies and gentlemen, Amon Mokoena.
How are you, gentlemen?
Fine,
right?
good, sir.
Good, thank you so much.
Talk about gospel music. That's the perfect shirt to wear on a Sunday to go to church.
You must button them, you know.
Yeah.
No. When it comes to different genres, what I've picked up since starting, to play at gigs on Sundays, is that DJs do not just focus only on soul or R&B, because they listen to the audience. The audience sort of give direction as to what they would like to listen to, and some gigs, some events have requests. A patron will come through and just ask for a particular song, and when you look at it, it's a gospel song, and obviously you need to try to work your magic into how you're going to use that song within your set, because you don't just play for the sake of playing because they're requesting it. You play because you need to touch someone, like you guys were talking about in terms of performances on stage and all that. I still don't, I'm going to sound like I'm hating, but I truly am not, because each and everyone can do whatever they want. But I believe the music will do the job for me.
Sure.
But I'd like you to see sing one of these songs. Just to mention Amen.
No, he started playing gospel because he doesn't go to church in the morning.
No,
that's his praise and worship time.
That's just an example, right? I don't just play gospel. I mean, last week, I was invited to an event, a gig in Mabopane, and I guess the rules were they're starting a new movement, so they wanted me to play new age, new wave only.
Okay.
And luckily for me, because on my radio show I have a feature on Mondays where I just play new wave, new age, new songs, basically new songs that the current crop of R&B and soul artists are bringing out. And you'd be surprised as to how many people know these songs. Like you play a song, you think it's new, people are singing along to it.
But age groups,
and that is
the younger
I was
age
about
group,
to say that's the younger age group.
Yeah, you see, when they are like my hair color, it's a different story. But it's good to see how new school artists and DJs can still have that connection to the old school music, because I think a solid foundation was laid. We were talking earlier on about the DJs at Metro who laid the foundation. And it's the same with, like I've been telling these guys, I've listened to the Sunday Fields show on YFM, and I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Because it's got that hip-hop, jazzy, smooth, sexy beat. So for me, it's like, as long as we can find commonality and a connection, I don't have a problem. I mean, do what you do.
It is the music. Like the foundation will always be there. Like you guys had said, nothing is an island. They borrow from somewhere, or they learn from somewhere. Yeah. And that part of, I guess, for them to be able to borrow has to do with where, like when your ear wakes up to music, basically, there's something that catches your attention in terms of whatever type of genre that you're listening to, and somebody else has borrowed that from a previous decade or whatever, and this is recurring every single time. So today, when you listen to this new age, new wave, there's a lot of songs that they have either sampled or remixed. there's a new song. I just forgot the artist that it's fairly new. Well, I think it was released last year or something. Pony, Genuine.
Yeah.
That song has been...
You ran that song.
It's called Rodeo. Speaking of riding. It's called Rodeo. And it sounds so beautiful because the person didn't just take the song and messed it all up. They still worked within the lines of what Genuine and Timbaland were trying to do. Yeah. And it brought in a new flair, new flavor into it. When you listen to it, you're like, okay, the lyrics are quite different, but you can clearly hear that these guys were not trying to be off the rails. They were just respecting what they have learned from the previous
And I'm going to send a shout out to the new school music lovers and appreciators and listeners of radio, because the younger generation through social media has actually given old school music a shot in the arm with the TikTok videos, people dancing to old school jams or doing remixes. And then my kids, because they watch a lot of TV and movies, they started getting into 80s and like even 70s music because of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
and he has this tape that he plays that his mom recorded.
Yeah.
And it's like, Player, Baby Come Back. That's like from 1975 or something like that. So it's culture, it's popular culture, and how we open the doors for the younger people to actually embrace what we know. But at the same time, we open up ourselves to listening to stuff that they like. I'm not saying that they're going to love everything that we like and vice versa, but at least be open to explore music and enjoy music and connect with the music.
And I think what you're going to get to see right now, especially that new school stuff, it's going to start filtering in slowly but surely. But I've also picked up one thing that's radio is precious time, hey?
Yeah,
and I'll give you a perfect example. If one person asks you for a new school song and 6 people ask you for an old school song, what are you going to do?
Of course, you're going with the majority.
Yeah, so I think it takes time for that new stuff to filter in, but it's also how you play the new stuff as well.
That's it. Yeah.
I figure you can see slowly but surely the new stuff filtering in, but then they're still going to go back to the basics. And I think the 90s will still be your safe ground to play in.
Yeah.
And then the 2000s you can play around with that, and then so I think it's starting to change.
You know, may come in with the introduction of new music. So when I joined Metro in the late 90s, Kwaito wasn't a thing the way it became. So one of my listeners didn't like Kwaito. So he phoned me in the studio and said, you know what, I never liked Kwaito, man. I never thought it much of a genre and all of that. But it's the way you sell the music on the radio, it's the way you back announce and introduce the song. So that's where a DJ has an important role to play, especially a radio DJ on air, selling it to the masses, but also when you at the venue, know when to slip in a song. Because if you're going to make it stand out for the wrong reasons, it's not going to flow. But if you know that this is a new school song, but like you said now, it's lending from Pony.
Yeah.
So if I play that song next to a 90s R&B track with its same tempo and flavor, then your set is not going to be too jarring to everybody.
And when is the best time to play the first gospel song?
After 11.
Stroke of midnight.
When people are lonely.
Why is that?
When people are very happy, extremely happy with themselves.
Speaking of DJs on radio, that's another thing. That's, I think, another important factor that we need to somehow talk about, because we are all radio DJs, and we're not just there because they liked us. We are there because we had the talent to be there. And they thought, if I place Kenny Maestri on 12 to 3, for example, he's going to give the station and the audience exactly what they need, because it's always, a relationship between two entities, what the company that you're working for and the people that you're working for, which are your listeners, right? And you didn't just start Mafuta Jams for the heck of it. It's something that came within your soul and you felt it first, and you knew how to use it, right?
So for me, my reference is obviously rock and roll, because my parents grew up in that era. So Elvis Presley, the Beatles, the soul movement from back when it was the Godfather of Soul, James Brown. So the reference there was rock and roll was considered gangster music, gyrating music. In fact, on the Ed Sullivan show, Elvis Presley was shot from the waist up. Yeah, because he was gyrating the pelvis, right? So it was considered rude or not appropriate. So there was a DJ named Alan Freed in the US who came up with the term rock and roll, because before that we didn't know rock and roll as that genre. He coined the term. So when I thought about it, Kwaito also had that gangster image, it's a bit vulgar, too risque for the older people. How do you sell it? So I gave it a brand name, Mafuta Jams, because at the time, 90s R&B, you had fat jams. So it wasn't anything to do with Pretty Hot and Tempting, but just the word fat. And yes, Mafuta means oil, but Studla versus Mafuta. And being from KZN, I mean, isiZulu was my reference there. Mafuta just had a nice ring to it, and that's how I rebranded Kwaito into a marketable commodity. And of course, when I back announce or throw food to a Kwaito song, I did it with a lot of passion and zeal. And that's why I got hired. I mean, I would go to an Indian or a colored club in South Africa and play just Kwaito for an hour.
I got a different take.
Yeah.
I got
I've
got a funny feeling that Mr. Maish is not telling us the honest truth about Mafuta Jams.
What's her name?
Mr. Maestri and I share one thing: food. For the love of food, I know Mafuta had Mafuta Jams and Kwaito music. There was food somewhere in that.
Well, if you eat a proper bunny chow, a proper Indian curry, you must have the oil, not oil, the oil floating on the top. So maybe that's where it comes from.
I figure, that's the
so
case.
I think that whole DJ presenter thing is an important element for us to be able to talk about, because that's why these things are called links. You're part of the links. You're not an entity away from the ads and the promos and everything that you have, the live reads. You are part of the links, and that chain has to move. It has to move as smooth as possible. And I don't like speaking negative about people, and I'll try not to. But most of the DJs today are just there to play the music.
Presenters.
Okay.
We DJs.
Okay. All right. Yes, there's a difference. They're just there to back announce and, play ads and all that. And there's no passion, there's no...
Look, I mean, the job of the on-air DJ is to be that seamless link between the ads and the songs and the promos and the competitions.
Yeah.
And when you do it seamlessly, people kind of take it for granted, but when you mess up, they notice. And it's the same with when you're at an event. Like you said, a request comes in. You're not going to change the flow of your set just like that, because then you're going to be all over the place. But they must trust you enough to say, okay, you'll play it in the next 10, 15 minutes, and just let the set flow. Like I said, I'm not there to be a star. I'm there to facilitate an experience. So I don't do the whole performing thing. Other people are comfortable with it, and maybe they feel that that's how they can market themselves. And of course, with TikTok, having those videos, you do.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, a lot of people say, Kenny, why do you look so stunned when you DJ? But it's like, my guys, I'm concentrating, and then I'm looking for the song, I'm searching, so I'm focused.
Not unapproachable?
Yeah, no. It's just, and you don't worry about your facial expressions, because you're DJing not for TV, you're DJing for the experience for the patrons, right?
Yeah.
Same with radio. Whereas this generation, I do feel sorry for them, because everything is documented. You got a bunch of people with cameras in your face, so you got to be worrying about all of those things. How do I look? Am I showing enough cleavage, if you have cleavage to show? Or, am I looking good? Am I sweating because it's going to be glistening on my forehead? You know what? Forget about that. Focus on the music.
Yeah.
That's what I do anyway.
Speaking of the music, question. Now, going into the new age, new wave type of sound now, right? I mean, we know where we come from when it comes to soul sessions. The type of sound that started this, when Paul and Eddie May, his soul rest in peace, started to commercialize this thing. We know exactly what they were doing. Now, the question is, are we now supposed to, or maybe meant to, listen to the songs first to get the soul out of the songs, to include them into our sets, or just play whatever it is that's new that is catching a wave?
No, not everything new is good, and not everything old is great. So, yes, as a DJ, that's your responsibility to curate playlists that has the potential or has proven track record to be a crowd pleaser. And not every single song of your set is going to be appreciated by every single person at your gig, because we all have different tastes. So, once again, what Paul said, if 6 people are asking for an old school song and 1 person asks for a new school song, who do you cater for? So, that's why being a DJ for me is hard work, because you're trying to have the best possible impact on the most number of people.
In the shorter space of time.
Yes. Yeah. So, people who think that you can just come in there and wing it, I'm sorry. This is why some of us have been in the industry for 2 or 3 decades, because we've learned, we've grown. And we understood that we are there to facilitate rather than to outshine everyone else.
You know, just to end this one, I figure this is the learning curve. I think every single Sunday soul sessions you go to, you learn something. You increase your database of songs, and that's what we're basically doing. And then sometimes we play that song in a different market. It doesn't catch the fire that the previous market was actually, listening to the song with the hype that it had. So you learn. And I'm pretty sure there's songs that you can play in Pretoria, but songs you cannot play in Cape Town, nor in Durban. But it just works in Cape Town. So I figure you learn from the market and the territory. And once again, we technically boil down to marketing people. We play a song that's specific for that markets, that's segmentation of that market, and we know that market's going to consume it. Because another thing about being a DJ is a repeat call. You want that repeat call, that repeat business. And sometimes hype is good to have, but then hype, what happens with hype? It fades out after a while.
Quickly. You mentioned learning curves. In my 50s, when I started DJing with this guy, and he was showing me the ropes because I wasn't a soul R&B DJ. But not every single one of my gigs or sets is successful or has the kind of impact that I want to. And as a DJ, you have to humble yourself and say, what, today it wasn't a good day at the office. I just couldn't read this crowd. And I've had those gigs where you just don't know what to play. You've got an arsenal of songs, but maybe because you're not a regular there in that community, that region, you don't understand it fully. So as a result, your set is not going to be the best set you played. And that's okay.
And secondly, you blame the owner of the venue for having high alcohol prices because you wanted people to be nice and happy by the time you play that song so it can be well received. So please blame inflation and the economy, not your bad DJing skills.
Episode 2 of The Origin of Sunday Soul Sessions was recorded at DJ Dino Bravo Productions. Kenny Maestri, thank you so much for popping in, and thank you so much for your valuable input on the
You'll
origins.
Get the invoice, don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, typical.
You're from KZN, so you know the vibe. But seriously, gents, thanks for having me. I love hanging out with radio people because we get to speak about stuff that we do, and we don't get to socialize that much because we're all busy with gigs and busy with our shows. So these are very rare opportunities. So thank you for that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Maestri. Right now, to wrap it up on episode 2 on the origins of Sunday Soul Sessions, I'll start, all right? When it comes to Sunday Soul Sessions, that one song or songs that if you had to describe, this is Sunday Soul Sessions, or if you're driving somewhere and a song or songs come up and it's like, that's Sundays, it just throws you to Sunday Soul Sessions. I would say, may his soul rest in peace, Eddie Zondi. This is the last time you're gonna cry, Teddy Pendergrass. That I think for the entire South Africa, when you hear that song, it screams Sunday Soul Sessions. Amon?
Ismail just took the artist, man. I would say the reason why I would choose Teddy Pendergrass Paul is that he reminds me of my brother. That's who literally introduced me to soul, with his vinyls. Got vinyls behind us and all that. He used to have stuff like this. He would buy, soul records. He would buy like your James Browns, your Teddy Pendergrass. He would have a Whitney Houston album. He would have a Roberta Flack album. Some of those artists, he introduced me to them because he didn't literally pull me by the hand and said, sit down, let's do this thing. He just played the music and the music just resonated with me. So thank you to my brother.
I'm looking to the future of the Sunday Soul Sessions, and I kind of think that the song that kind of embodies both the past and the present is Silk Sonic. Leave the door open. You never knew that
Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars.
They would never come with a song that is done by new artists with a relatively old feel.
Yeah. Magic.
But you can play it in both worlds.
Magic.
Amazing.
Before we close, y'all's input on Afro Soul on how Afro Soul is doing at gigs?
Love it. It's a must-have.
Afro Soul is it's our genre, man. You know,
our-
it's ours.
Do
you know,
you guys feel that? Because I feel it, that we need more. Because I think we were just left
yeah.
in the lurch, so to speak, by the likes of the Zonkes, Brian Temers, that we need more.
Yeah, there's
Afro
like,
traction.
there are artists that are actually giving us, you know, more Afro soul, and you know, you may not think this is an artist that would give you more. Like you know how big Umbambai is at these gigs. You understand? And there's a man that came through doing hip hop, and then he decided, you know what, I'm just going to sing and enjoy myself, and he does so well with his group, because there's a whole lot of people who are. There's a whole lot of people from that camp. So, you know, there's a lot more artists that are coming out that are doing quite amazing. I'm hearing Lua's songs in my head now,
Yes,
so I'll give you a
me
chance
too.
to do your thing.
Me too.
Paul.
I just think Afro Soul is going to surprise us quite a lot. I just think that where we are right now, there's a lot of focus on a piano, because it's a selling genre. But music has a tide; it changes over time. I think the next batch of soulful artists that are coming out are going to surprise us quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I think their sound is going to go international. And I think that it might be a language thing, but we listen to different songs from different countries. I think Afro Soul is going to surprise us next year and this year. And hence the Metro FM Music Awards are taking place very soon. And I figure this year's nominations for new artists or new soul is going to be a beautiful category.
Brilliant. Please, we want your input, all right? We want your input. Firstly, when was your first time you went to Sunday Soul Sessions? Drop it in the comments. And if you don't mind, we'd also love to know, when was the first time you saw one of us at Sunday Soul Sessions?
Yeah.
Peace.
You're watching yourself. Must talk to them. They're right here.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Peace, guys.
Your input. We need it.
Thank you so much. Murimukio.
Peace.
And that's it. Episode number 2. The origins of Sunday Soul Sessions. I am Ismail Abrams.
Nakalineke Amon Mokoena wenoma.
Paul Mtirara.
Episode 2 of The Origin of Sunday Soul Sessions was recorded at DJ Dino Bravo Productions.